Hello and welcome back to Mind Body Medicine for Chronic Pain. You have made it to season 2. We are on to the next chapter, and I'm just so glad that you're here with me and you're along for the ride with me. What an amazing way to kick off season 2. This interview we have today is literally just like fucking fire. There's no other way to describe it. It is just like fucking fire. I'm not going to say anything about it. I'm just going to let you listen to it. Because I know you're going to get a lot out of it. This is a really, really cool one. So, okay, let me just briefly say, if you're interested in weekly individual therapy, I would be thrilled to meet you and to be your therapist. You can request a consultation with me through my website, and my website is www.mindbodymedicineforchronicpain.com. Also, www.seanhershey.com. They're the same. It'll take you to the same place. So yeah, if you're interested, by all means, please reach out. If you're enjoying the podcast, please follow the podcast so you can get when the future episodes are coming out. Rate the podcast, write a written review would be really appreciated. It helps more people find this work and elevates this stuff. And you can also follow me on Instagram if you would like. I am there at mygaytherapist. Okay, I'm not going to say one more thing. This interview is long, but there is not a single sentence that could be cut out because it is just good. So without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome to season 2. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mind Body Medicine for Chronic Pain. I have had many amazing guests, and I know I say this is such a guest of honor every time, and because truly it's true every time. And for real though, for me, today's guest is the highest honor of the guests of honors because I am sitting here with one of my clients, Michelle. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Sean. Thank you.
Thank you so much for agreeing to be part of this. Truly, it means a lot to me. And I just want to say that Michelle really wanted to be on the podcast and was excited about offering her wisdom to the TMS conversation. So welcome, Michelle.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I've been a client of yours, I realize, for almost a year now.
Yeah, exactly. We're hitting like just about exactly a year. So, okay, for today, we are going to get into like our first main topic will be, for those of you listening, we're going to get into the messy middle. And if you don't know what that is, that's a Nicole Sachs term that you will fully understand by the end of our conversation. So don't worry about it. We will get to that. The second main topic is we want to talk about TMS therapy and what that is like, because that is something that Michelle and I have the pleasure of doing together every week. So we'll talk about that. But before we get into that, I want to start with let's take our time to set the stage. And Michelle, why don't you talk to us about the story of your mind-body symptoms and finding this work, and then we'll get into where you're at now, and we'll go from there.
That sounds great. Okay. Thank you. It is true. It's an honor for me to be here also, Sean. So I really appreciate it, in part because I am I'm a TMS podcast listener junkie for sure. And as you and I have talked about, most of the stories, truly 99% of the stories are inspirational. They're recovery stories. And that also doesn't reflect where I am. And I know where a lot of people are who are consuming these podcasts and are doing this work. So, so I would love to talk about, I can actually be pretty abridged and just get to the sort of most meaningful of my symptoms in a way. But
cool. Yeah, and whatever, take your time. Whatever you want. And I do just want to also say yes, what you're saying about that everything is great now is an awesome narrative, and it doesn't reflect where everyone's at. So then people end up feeling unseen, myself included. There are days, for example, I'm sitting here right now, my hip feels good, my stomach feels good, I feel good. that is not me every day. Sometimes
Mhm.
I am in the messy middle too. So yes,
Mhm.
Michelle and I have that in common. And
Mhm.
we will talk about that. But yes, please go on.
Thank you. Yes, totally. All right, to be a little less abridged, I definitely in terms of, we go to the physical symptoms pretty quickly with this work, but of course we'll talk about other things around that. Growing up, I don't recall having physical symptoms, meaning like, 0 through graduating high school. I may have. I do have a bunch of journals from that time of my life, and I do see how I often enough in those journals commented on having like my stomach hurting and relating it to stress that was going on in my life. I just don't remember that. And certainly it did not in my experience become like an over, like, oh my God, I just have stomach aches all the time. But I say that because that currently is my most meaningful symptom is digestive issues. So I find that interesting. But I did grow up with a lot of anxiety. I grew up with um, a lot of chaos. I certainly am somebody who experienced capital T trauma. I grew up with a lot to sort of become hyper vigilant about and around, and a lot of scanning for danger, safety, those sort of things. When I got out of my childhood home and all of that, I ended up in college and hours away. And at some point, I think it was in grad school. Yes. So I'm also a therapist, I should say that. And I was getting my MSW, and it was about 17 years ago, and I was in my, early 20s, and I started experiencing symptoms that were weird to me. I started fainting kind of often and just had some other like sort of more effusive symptoms. Long story short with that spun me into an enormous amount of health anxiety. And at the time, all I could perceive in that was, oh my God, like of course, like I'm just anxious about my health and this, these symptoms, and of course, I'm going to do anything and everything I can to like figure this out or treat myself well. But like, I just remember being in my early 20s and having really extreme thoughts about what was going on. Like, I definitely must have, I must have cancer, or I definitely must have some crazy autoimmune disorder. And looking back on that now, I just find that, which, because thankfully I didn't have those things, but I just find that so interesting. Like, that's, like, just how clear it is to me now that, like, that was a lot of anxiety, Michelle. Like, there was a lot of I could say it's health anxiety, medical anxiety, but it was just, like, anxiety, and part of
Mhm.
how I dealt with that was, like, becoming really rigid around food and health. I think it would be fair to say I became orthorexic, for a period of time, and, meaning, like, obsessed over eating healthy food, and through this TMS work that I found, like, I understand kind of anxiety or like any symptom really, even just a mental health symptom as kind of like a symptom imperative, like we talk about that a lot, but like it's just part of the TMS picture for me. So the anxiety I had over those health issues, which eventually faded, um, was like it felt really functional to me, like, and these are all the things I can do. So anyway, that was my early 20s, and I bring that up because I've kind of had some degree of health anxiety ever since, and it wasn't something I could even like own or say. I would say like 4 years ago. I couldn't have even said that to you or anybody. I would have felt
Mhm.
so criticized, misunderstood, ashamed, maybe gaslit if somebody suggested that to me. So many years later, about 10 years ago, I'm fast forwarding. I definitely
Cool.
had
Yeah,
some.
yeah. And I just let me just say, as we're transitioning from one thing to the next,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm sure there are people listening who relate to health anxiety being one of their symptom imperatives, and it's so important the message that you're bringing to people listening to this that like that is a symptom imperative. And I love what you're saying that it's hard to recognize that, and you would have felt at one point like, how dare you suggest that, maybe
Mhm.
even some ways like how dare you take that from me. But
Mhm.
what we're both confidently saying is like that's a TMS symptom imperative, right?
Totally. It's a TMS
Okay,
symptom
yeah,
imperative, and in a way, it's almost a TMS personality trait. Like, it's like
right.
a little of
Yeah,
both.
right.
But absolutely. And I can't, like, I'm so excited to talk about that part of it in a little while. Like, meaning like what TMS therapy and what TMS work has done for me. But
Cool.
Yeah, I certainly before I go like, I was just about to tell you about 10 years ago when my actual, like, main what I make all my meaning out of
Yeah.
symptoms began. Right
Yeah.
before I tell you that, there were and now I see in retrospect, so many other things that came and went that were seemingly chronic in a weird way, things that would last 9 months or 2 years, back stuff, like, various things. Mainly back stuff. And so I just wanna say, like, I always had something. There was always something going on for me where I was like, "Why me?" And I was like a really quote unquote "healthy" 20-something-year-old for this entire period of time. Um, and very, like, high functioning, extremely so. One of the, trauma sort of responses, and I think of it also as a superpower of my childhood, is I was very parentified and I'm, like, really on the ball. And so a lot of that stuff, that's just, like, how I led my life, especially during this whole phase of, like, having these physical symptoms, never once making a connection between the 2 or anything else, let me just say. So, okay. Then so I have, like, already high anxiety about health, and
Mhm.
it could be anything, like, even when I had my back stuff, like, at some point in my 20s, I was never laid back about it. I was always just, like, if it was going on, I was researching about it. I was also seeing chiropractors and this and that, but I was always, like, researching and always, like, preoccupied by it, and eventually, 10 years ago, when I basically what seemed to happen was I woke up and I suddenly had a completely different digestive system. There may have been things that led up to that I just don't quite recall, but, like, essentially, it felt like I woke up to a completely different feeling in my stomach, at my digestive tract, and my bowel movements were completely different. It seemed at first like, "Oh, I have, like, some kind of, do I have food poisoning? What's going on here?" Um, but that has not stopped since. That has lasted 10
Mhm.
years. It changed initially from one form. You talk about everything on this podcast, actually, so let me just go there. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Please.
it initiated with, like, diarrhea, loose bowels, whatever, like, on that one fine day that I woke up, and some nausea. That lasted 4 months, and that was peculiar to me. And then, after about 4 months, it kind of converted into constipation, bloating, and that's what it's been ever since. Pretty severely so. And when this happened, yes, like, I actually was in a very stressful time in my life. I was in a stressful time in my relationship. I was definitely also, like, I actually really remember being in a phase of my life where I felt my childhood traumas were kind of, like, front and center for a lot of reasons. Like, I was definitely, like, not in my power during this time. I definitely felt afraid, triggered, like, I was
Mhm.
definitely in a space like that. And so, of course, when these, digestive symptoms cropped up, oh my god, like, I took them and I ran with them. Like, I know
Mm.
you and I have talked about this, but, like, I ran. I mean, I wasn't just like, "Ooh, funny stomach. Let me just drink some tea and, like, go on with my day." Like, I basically, like, with every bit of my ability, did everything I could do from that
Mm.
moment, that time, till I will say 7 years later when I found TMS work. So for 7 years.
Yeah.
You wanna say something?
Oh, yeah, but just give us some
Yeah.
examples because people will really relate to like trying so hard. And I know that you had that phase of your
Mhm.
life where you were trying so hard, and
Yes.
that's that, and
Yes.
it's so painful. So yeah, tell us about that.
Thank you. Yeah, I probably would have glossed over it, and it's just because it's so much, but it's important. I feel like
Yeah.
so much of this part of this many people's stories, definitely mine, is that it happened in, like, the shadows, you know? I mean, certainly there may be people who are, like, a big part of their stuff is, like, they ask for a lot of help. They seek the attention, that's part of their TMS stuff. That's a little part of mine eventually, but mainly it was, like, "How can I fix this in secret? How can I fix this because I don't trust anybody else to fix it?" Which is a total allegory of my childhood. And so basically the things I did, of course I did go to just like a regular old doctor. I'm like, what's going on? And they were absolutely not helpful. IBS. I was referred to
Of
a
course, right.
gastroenterologist. He was super like, oh,
Same. I mean, same. You, as you know, same. But
yeah,
yes, go on.
just okay. Thanks. Peace. Like, the
Right.
gastroenterologist, same thing. And when I realized that those two entities weren't going to help me, remember I already had a tendency toward like orthorexia, like super healthy eating, like to the extreme, like being afraid of not eating healthy food. And even though that was actually like, I was in a better phase with that, those claws were there, like they were waiting for me. And so I basically like took a deep dive into extreme restriction diets and phasing things out, phasing things in, researching like every last little supplement, every herb that ever existed, taking things, all sorts of things. I did some things that I think were very scary now when I think about them. I won't even name them. But just yeah, like things that I was putting in my body that had risks or whatever.
Mhm,
I always
mhm.
joke that I was like on the dark web for some of these things, like
Yeah,
like
I've been there. Yep.
I know you have a lot of like I was in forums, I was totally in that space of like, oh, this random person who I have no idea who they are suggested this. I'm gonna go do that
Mhm,
now, like in a forum.
mhm,
I consider myself a very like grounded person and like
mhm,
strong prefrontal cortex and this stuff when it came to my health, I was like there I have no decision making abilities. I'm just panicked and I'm going to like try things after try things after try things. Eventually, I went over to like full blown functional medicine, which I don't know, costs approximately $4 million. And I gave them all my money
right,
and
right,
saw
right.
so many different people in that space because I kept thinking, oh, after a few months, like this person actually has a better sense or that person would. And it was like chasing some dragon or some impossible thing, like always thinking, oh, the next practitioner is going to help me. And then they wouldn't help me enough or whatever, going to the next one. I definitely was eventually diagnosed with SIBO, which I wore like a badge for 5 years after that diagnosis. I don't think there was a day of my life that passed that I didn't say that out loud. I have SIBO to somebody. Um, and eventually, when all the functional medicine stuff wasn't working, I mean, there were so many wacky other things I did too. But I eventually even started paying out of pocket because that's what the arrangement was with this person for a like quadruple board certified gastroenterologist, in New York City, who specialized in SIBO. Like, so at that point, I'm like swinging back in this other direction and now paying out of pocket and doing like heavy duty tests. Like at this point, every scan has been done, every like last scope in every way. It was basically like I said when I began this, it was like a full sprint that just didn't stop. And so the way this was impacting, I think, my life and my symptoms and my mind and my body at the time was like I was always afraid. Like there wasn't any
Mhm,
phase of that that gave me solace, that gave me hope, that gave me any indication that this was ever going to get better. Oh, because if it's I'm saying without saying, I guess, none of these things helped me. None of I never had change. Yeah.
right, right, right. Oh god, yeah. I mean, just the way you're describing a full sprint without stopping. I mean,
Mhm.
wow. How many people surely relate to that? Like when you say that, I know my version of that same story.
Mhm.
Damn, that is a really, really hard place to be. And I see what you're saying. I'll absolutely connecting that to fear, right? Because you're in such a state of fear that whole
Yeah,
time.
absolutely. And like I said earlier too, that's like allegory to childhood thing for me in particular. I was very much, as I said, a parentified child, and I didn't feel like I could trust the adults in my life. I was so mature for my age and handling a lot. And eventually that was I don't know if it was eventual or right away, but eventually I really inflated that part of my personality in this whole process because I
Mhm.
was literally going to lab techs at a point, bringing them research about how they interpreted my labs. And I mean, nobody usually sees the lab tech, like they just like review your
Right,
shit and then you see it on your portal. But I was like, oh,
right,
what's his name? What layer of I mean, floor of the hospital
right.
is he on? And I would like find him with research to talk about things.
Mhm,
And I felt I couldn't trust anybody and I was the only
mhm,
adult in the room. And so I have to say at this point, I am a very self-reflective person. As I said earlier, I'm also a therapist, like I live sort of as somebody who is curious, is aware, of like interpersonal ways of being and all these sort of things. I did start to have a feeling, this is again before I found TMS work. I did start to have a feeling like, oh, Michelle, like I don't even know if it was a clear thought, but it was a feeling. It was like you're doing something here. Like you're kind of addicted to something. And so when my dear husband would sometimes, suggest to me that like stress was a part of this, or I was really, um, these are never his exact words, but like, paraphrasing, like pretty obsessed with all of this, or like, is there any other possibility here? I would be really, really hurt and offended by that. But there was always some little part of me that was like, but maybe, like, I just didn't
Mhm.
know how to almost come out about that. It would be so
Totally.
wrecking. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also,
No, you go ahead. Yeah.
go ahead. You want to say
No, no, no,
something?
no, no. Yeah, keep,
Okay.
keep going.
It just feels like it would like wreck not just my ego or something like that, but like it became my life's work. Like it became such an identity. And so how could it possibly be that I could poke a hole in this and that I even had something to do with it? Um and so there was this one fine day. I mean, I'm rock bottom. Let me just say too about the health, because it's like, oh, chronic constipation and bloating. Yes, that's really distressing. I truly do have it every day, that an experience of it. But eventually, and this was sort of after COVID, I have two daughters. So I gave birth right after COVID to my second daughter. The stress of my life and my fear and the victimhood I felt about my health symptoms definitely imploded around then. And I started experiencing all kinds of other things that I related to my gut. Now I just see whatever, they're all under the TMS umbrella. But at the time, it's like it just became a lot more about like chronic fatigue, like deep chronic fatigue, like really bad brain fog, like things like that that started to feel really scary to me. And of course, I started glomming onto like, oh, it's mold or it's parasites or it's, it just got totally wacky. And so I was kind of at that rock bottom when I found TMS work.
Mhm,
And it was totally by accident. I was listening to a podcast that Nicole was on, Nicole Sachs, and
mhm.
she was talking about something that wasn't even her normal shtick. It was actually about like Glennon Doyle. That's how I found it. I was just want to hear someone talk about Glennon Doyle that day, not even listen to Glennon Doyle. It was
Because
so much.
don't we all want a little bit of that?
Yeah. One of those types of days. And I'm like, oh, who is this like cool sounding woman talking about Glennon? And it was actually about Glennon. It was about recovery. Ultimately, they're both open about being in recovery. And I was like just finding that intriguing on that day. At the very end of Nicole's podcast, she talks about chronic pain and then she relates it to IBS. And I'm like, what? Like, what was I just listening to? Like, she didn't
Mhm,
reference that for the, it was a really unusual one of her episodes. And I was like, but wait, something about this woman, she really like, I was into her while she was
mhm.
talking. So, long story short, I looked at the actual podcast I was listening to. The fact that she referred to anything chronic pain as IBS was so affirming to me in some way. Like, I was
Mhm,
like, okay, I feel a little seen. I never thought of it that
mhm,
way, but like
mhm.
somebody
Well,
else.
right, and let me just butt in to say, like, what I hear there is, like, this transition from, like, I have SIBO or I have mold toxicity to, like, maybe there's another way to understand this, right?
Yes,
Okay. Yep. Yeah,
totally.
yeah.
Yes.
Cool. Yep. Okay, so keep talking.
Well, because also I had heard of John Sarno a long time ago. When I had chronic back pain a long time ago, a dear friend gave me his healing back pain book. I read it. I thought it was cool. I didn't like care to apply it, but I did. I and I actually had Sarno's. I don't even know if I've told you this, but he had whatever those like 14. He has like a list of 14
Oh, the
sayings,
12 daily
12
reminders.
daily
Yeah.
reminders.
Yeah.
I actually had that on my wall
Oh,
for the
wow.
longest time. Yeah, and I guess I never mentioned that. I think a massage therapist gave it to me a long, long, long time ago, and I just always liked them. And I'm like, cool. But I never was like, but this can't be everything. Like I never could go there with it.
Right.
But I
Right.
did. I was
Right, right,
aware.
right. Right, because you had SIBO, Like, you
Right.
didn't think at that time that, like, oh, back pain might
Yes.
follow the exact same pattern as
Yes.
IBS/SIBO, whatever you wanna call it. Yep, you didn't know
100%.
yet. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you helped me make that connection just now too. It really was seeing somebody, Nicole, who I didn't even have any stock in yet. I just liked her personality, making that connection.
Mhm.
And yeah, like to say I was obsessed with the exact bacteria that were in my microbiome is an understatement. So like I was like obsessive about like, oh no, it's not the right exact amounts because I had like every functional test to determine
Right.
that or whatever. And so I couldn't understand. I could never be like, "Oh, no, that's just a chronic thing," and I could work that out, in with my nervous system or mind. But anyway, Nicole's podcast was my gateway, and, yeah, I proceeded to consume it from there. And I could say now how TMS work has impacted me, but I've been talking a lot.
Yeah. No, no, this is awesome. And hearing your story, I'm just struck. It's funny because I know your story, but
Mhm.
I'm just struck again by like how hard you tried. And I just want to say for like people listening, like Michelle is so competent. Michelle could do like anything. I mean, the fact that you're like, I was going to the lab tech, I'm like, I wouldn't even know how to do that. It's like you truly like it's like you could do anything. And I mean, what I'm hearing is that like at that time the thing you couldn't do yet was like relax, trust yourself, trust
Mhm.
anyone, trust that anything was going to be okay. I mean,
Mhm.
how would you describe it just so like people get it? Like, like what
Yeah.
was missing there before we
Yeah.
get into the rest?
I think you hit the nail on the head. It's an interesting thing. I'm gonna throw out a psychology term. It was very ego dystonic because I felt I would have never identified as somebody who wasn't trusting of people. Like I feel like such a humanist, and I live for community and things like that, like in theory.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's part of the reckoning of this work. And so to answer your question is like, yeah, I didn't trust anybody could help me. I didn't trust anybody could tune into me. And I thought that even if I could pay $4 million to all the people and get the most crazy ass scans and tests, that even somebody there was missing something. Somebody made a mistake.
Hmm.
They blinked
Hmm.
twice and I didn't see that. Like I always felt like I was the exception and it was always going to be catastrophic for me.
Hmm.
And I could have never ever fucking said this back then, but like
Hmm.
the victimhood that I was living in was like I it was the water I swam in. I couldn't see it. Like I was just like, this can't. I'm just doomed. And by the
Yeah.
way, it's not just SIBO. The SIBO is going to develop into worse things. I mean, it was always about that for me, like on that physical level.
Mhm. Absolutely. Okay. Yes. And I mean, what I'm hearing there is such a profound. I mean, we'll get to this in a second. As what happened as you started doing the work, and this is a good transition because what I hear is you saying like, I, on some level, if you had come to me and said like, you don't really trust others, you would have been like, that's not true. What do you mean I don't
Mhm.
trust others? I'm a humanist. I trust
Mhm.
everyone. I trust humanity, and yet underneath that, you now know there was like a deep layer of mistrust that you hadn't discovered yet. And the reason I really want to just like draw that out is for people listening who are like, I don't really have repressed emotions. That's not really me. The emotional stuff doesn't relate to me. You were that
Mhm.
person, and now we know that was not true of you. And same, I mean, I have my own version of the same story, but
Mhm.
yes, so talk to us. Once you found Nicole
Yeah.
Sachs's work, then what?
Well, it's interesting you just said that about repressed emotions because at the time, it's 3 years ago, but she was offering people to leave a speak pipe, like a 5 minute thing, a message for her. And maybe if you're lucky, 1 in 100, she would like pull it out, put it on her podcast, and then respond to it. And I did that. I left a really weepy message for her about how could this possibly apply to SIBO though? And also like, I don't have any repressed emotions. And I mean, I was very like humble when I said it, but I still was like, I had just found the work. And so I was like just trying to work through my layers of doubt. And she put it on her podcast and she responded. And it was really beautiful of her. And what she said was beautiful. But I bring it up now because I'm laughing. Like 3 years later, I like it's such a good mark of time for me, even with this work, because I would never say what I said in that message now. Like I repressed emotions maybe isn't even technically correct, but I certainly had so many shadow parts and so many blind spots and so many things that were just way too uncomfortable to acknowledge and look
Mhm.
at, which I guess maybe brought about some repressed emotions. But
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's hard. I feel it's hard to sort of describe, like, but there's all synonyms for the
yes,
same basic
yes,
principle. Yeah, yeah.
totally.
So okay, so what happened next?
Yeah. So, and this is why I'm here for the Messy Middle podcast because I don't want to bury the lead. Like I still have chronic constipation. Well, I don't want to say the word chronic even right now. I still have pretty much regular symptoms of constipation and bloating. But in the last 3 years, there's two main things I want to make sure I say. The first is I had a lot of belief work to do, and it still crops up. And I think that's really natural for most of us in the TMS world. Like, lucky is the person who just believes and believes all the way to the end. I'd maybe become that person eventually, but I I can still get triggered by my symptoms at times. Like, recently I'm kind of getting triggered again and I'm working with it. But once I got through enough of the belief work, the psychological work for me, and maybe the emotional and psychological are kind of tied together in a way when I get
Mhm.
to what I'm about to say. But and I've said this to you, Sean, like, if my symptoms never go away, like my digestive issues never change from this moment on, I know I'm gonna still have to work with that. Like, that's gonna be a regular thing to sort of practice acceptance around. But I 1000% like have radically shifted around the way I relate to those symptoms, the way I relate to myself, the way I relate to my life in a way that like I feel like this is a very, very hopeful thing to say out loud right now. I don't always feel this way, but I do think it's true that like I think I've done the work. Like, not that I haven't, there's not more work to do, but more like I'm lucky. Like, if this is all I ever get,
Mhm.
like I am like blessed by this work, is what I want to say.
Mhm.
Like, this work has
Mhm.
absolutely changed the landscape for me. And one way that's
That
shown up. Oh, go ahead.
no, no, I just like that's so powerful that you
Hmm.
can sit. Okay, so we're getting into this place where we're talking about the messy middle, which is for those of you who aren't familiar with this idea, it's Nicole Sachs's way of describing like when you're in the messy middle, you're not at the beginning where you're like this is what Michelle is describing as the rock bottom, where and this shitty thing about it is it's not the beginning. It's the beginning of this, but you're 7 years in. Some people might be more years in, some people less, some people, I don't know, they find this somehow faster, but you are already deep in to believing that there's something wrong with your body. You're trying everything to fix yourself. And then
Hmm.
you find this, and then you start to question, like, could this be an emotional thing for me? Could this be a psychological thing for me? Then that's where the messy middle starts. Because here we are where it's like we're not in the place of like, I'm doing great. My chronic symptoms are gone. We are in the
Hmm.
place of like, I get it. I'm working on it. I am experiencing improvement, but like
Hmm.
I'm still feeling the symptoms. And how many people out there are in that space? I just want to
Hmm.
share, which I've said on this podcast for myself. There are days like today where I'm like, I'm feeling good. I'm
Hmm.
cured from chronic pain. That is not every day. I visit the messy middle a lot. So here we
Hmm.
both are to talk about this. But yes, Michelle, get what were you going to say?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I appreciate uh always your humility around that. It's very helpful. But yeah, I so the transformation, that big thing I was saying is like like it was as big as I made that sound, it's been a very quiet process. It's been a lot of private reckoning. So there is the work, and I want to talk about the work in a moment. But first, like, just wrestling with and trying to negotiate these ideas of like, oh my gosh, like, is there some other reason why I've been on this full sprint that isn't exactly just about how do I get rid of these symptoms? Like, what is that little feeling I had the whole time that I was like, ooh, you're doing something that, like, whatever, it's just something, I don't know, like, you're not really grounded when you're doing this,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
all the like secretive sort of like back alley things I tried to do to like, deal with the symptoms early days, like when I would
Hmm.
stare myself sometimes and I'm like, ooh, like what's that? Like that's interesting. But also, as I said, around the time when the symptoms started, I was in a really difficult time in my relationship with my now husband, then boyfriend. And one thing that came out of me having these chronic symptoms for so many years, at this point it's been 10, um, is he shifted in how he started to relate to them himself. At first, he wasn't the most like warm, supportive, like it just wasn't his way of, addressing it with me. And that didn't at the time seem very helpful to me. But what eventually shifted is he became more of a caretaker. And I started to receive a lot of like quote unquote positive attention from him around my symptoms. And I noticed that that became its own thing now. Like, what would I do? Like, and it's a very delicate topic. Let me just say this too, because there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people out there who are ill, who deserve support and attention, and I am not suggesting anybody should not have that or go without it, but just for myself, and I believe this is a pattern in a lot of TMSers. um that became its own way of subconsciously wanting these symptoms to remain. Like, it's one way I derived meaning out of them that seemed beneficial. um
Mm-hmm.
and and I know
No, no.
that.
Thank you for
Yeah.
saying that. Absolutely. And what I'm thinking is like what we all need is someone to trust, someone to take care of us. Like we all need to be in the role of getting taken care of sometimes. And your symptoms, they gave you that, you know,
Hmm.
and they
Right.
give that to so many people. I mean, I love what you're saying. This is much bigger than your story. I mean, this happens
Yeah,
to a lot of people. But yeah,
totally.
yeah, go ahead.
And so, in my particular case, like, yeah, that maybe in some ways it even helped me and my husband figure out how to have that more of that relationship. Maybe it helped him to teach him to be more of a caretaker. It's possible.
Mhm.
Maybe it's not all for naught, but like, it definitely went into overdrive. I have no doubt about that. Like, I know that because I could be like in my life, work, friends, this, whatever, like being who I am and feeling good and thinking really like sort of like healthy thoughts for myself, responding to people's questions from like a certain orientation that feels good. And then like a second later, I could see my husband and suddenly be negative. I'm not calling expressing emotions negative, but like feeling a lot of negativity, victimhood, and only wanting to talk about how my stomach feels. And it's just such an interesting thing. It's like a pattern I noticed. And so I at least wanted to deconstruct that a little bit.
Mhm.
And just like, for TMS in a person, I think even TMS in a relationship, like that could have been holding a place for like maybe a healthier form of caretaking between us, which, is something we've learned how to navigate. But like, yeah, I think otherwise, just being able to literally never say SIBO anymore was its own
Mm.
freedom. Just to be
Yeah.
able to be like, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay." Even if I'm naming it that it's constipation or whatever, like, just that, the relief, I don't even think I understood the identity that I took on with the diagnosis that was getting me
Mhm.
literally absolutely nowhere. Um,
Mhm.
and there's so many other things about it. I think that the more deep things are like what I think TMS work has helped me do, and I have had many bouts of journaling and different ways of going about my TMS work. Um, and then I have big lulls, which is part of my messy middle. So I just want to be really clear about that.
Mhm.
I do have resistance. I see that as part of my TMS sort of like stuff, but resistance in the work, not so much in any of like the psychological work or belief. But what I want to say on a deeper level is that as somebody who's been in therapy for most of the last 23 years and who is a therapist and has always been a very like deep feeler, deep thinker. Um, I've never encountered work that's like been able to transcend my life and call to such radical responsibility like I have TMS work. So what I think I've learned over the last 3 years of being in this quote unquote messy middle and doing this work without a lot of symptom relief in this way is that I'm, like, free. Like, I just feel free now. Like, I just feel like I get to have honest conversations with myself, and I get to
Mhm.
be curious about what's going on instead of, like, panicked and responding to what's going on from a panicked place. I also get to, um, be curious about, like, whatever those patterns are, like, what is the content there? And that's not something I was looking at before. I mean, I could be in therapy, but I wasn't looking at the content of, like, sometimes people make connections between like, oh, the stress I feel and then a stomach ache. I don't always do it that's not usually how I like relate to it, although maybe I will one day, but it's just like in life. Like I notice how when I'm really overwhelmed or there's something going on that's really difficult, I will scan for danger. I think like many of us do when our nervous systems are being overrode. And that is definitely my predisposition from childhood. It's showing up. And I scan. And when I scan, even if it's subconscious, but sometimes it's very conscious, I notice every last little feeling in my body, usually my digestive system, or I start to, do the math and how many bowel movements I've had and were they good enough. And that's just something now that I'm like, oh my God, look what you're doing. And I like apply all the TMS stuff instead of it being like something I believe to death and like need to do something about.
Okay. Yes. When you say the TMS work is deeper than any other emotional thing that you've tried, and that you know this world. You are a therapist. You have been in therapy for decades. You know this world. I just want to say to you, as you know, I've said before, like, same,
Mhm.
totally same. There's something about this work that just takes it deeper. And the way that I describe that, or the way I think about that, is like, because what we're learning is how to listen to the body. And we're learning to like really listen to the body from a place where we know, like, we're learning to speak the language of the body. And
Mhm.
rather than think like, my stomach hurts, I'm quote unquote listening to my body. So I'm going to go to the doctor. We
Mhm.
are learning like, and then the doctor's going to misinterpret that symptom. And, I mean, you know how it goes.
Mhm.
What we're learning is like, how to actually speak the language of the body. And it's just so fucking profound.
Yes. Yes. It is so profound. And, it's interesting, like, I would have said, like, in my 20s, like, I was, discovering, like, yoga and, like, mind body work, whatever that meant to me in my 20s, which was not
Mhm.
TMS work. It was something else.
Yep.
But, like,
Yep.
I would have said, like, "Oh, I'm so open to all of that." Like, truly, like, was so holistically minded, like, still am, but, like, certainly even was in my early adulthood and even when all this started, and I still couldn't somehow, like, what's the right word? I couldn't, like, I just feel like the TMS work is like a reckoning. Like, I just feel like
Mhm.
you were
Well
so
said.
confronted with yourself and
Yep.
with your patterns, and it's,
Mhm.
as somebody who experienced a lot of trauma in my childhood, I am not blaming myself for any of that, but I still have so many patterns and so many core narratives and perceptions and beliefs that I was just letting run the show completely. And,
Yeah. Without
yeah.
knowing it. I mean, I think that's so important, right? I mean, would you say that?
Yeah, exactly, because the thing is, like,
Yeah.
I know that I also can't turn these things off necessarily, so it's, like, even just knowing that I'm doing it is freedom,
Mhm.
rather than,
Mhm.
like,
Absolutely.
the opposite, which is what I was doing. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's very confronting work,
Mhm.
yeah, there's a lot I can say.
Okay, yeah, well, wait, I just wanna say it's so beautiful to hear you say, like, it's very confronting. It's obviously that's very challenging, and yet you're like, "It has radically changed my life, like, I am free now." That
Mhm,
juxtaposition between, like, I am really confronted with stuff I don't like to be confronted with, and it's
mhm,
freeing me.
mhm,
That's beautiful. So, okay, so we're talking a lot about, like, how it's really nice to hear how good things have gotten for you, and
mhm.
I do wanna also, like, let's just feel into, let's do some of the shitty side of the messy middle just so people know that's still there
Sounds
and they're not like,
great.
"Oh,
Yeah.
damn," like
Yeah,
like like because I know things are still hard for you sometimes,
for
totally
sure.
normal, totally fine. There's more work to do as there is for me, as there is for anyone who's relating to the messy middle. So just give us a little bit of like,
Yeah.
what's the hard stuff still?
I I appreciate that a lot. I can go there very easily. I mean, so I think that one big part of at least my journey with this is to really try to not be outcome dependent. Like this work
Mm,
to try to detach the outcome of like, oh, I'm no longer going to have constipation and bloating with the work I'm doing in the TMS world or whatever. And I only say that because I struggle with that sometimes. Like I struggle with like, oh, until I really see my symptoms shift, like maybe like I could just go into a whole spiral about it. Like not even, I mean, certainly I do have, like I was saying earlier, moments of my belief, like I need to counter my disbelief at times that crops up, but it's more like, um it's more like I just don't believe in myself, like, at times, it's like, "Oh, why is this taking so long?" Like, "Oh, like, why haven't you actually done this form of the work in this many weeks or months?" And,
Mhm,
so I can be really critical of myself in that way. Um, I need to at least mention this, that I have had moments and phases of my symptoms shifting in the last 3
mhm,
years. So I have had some real life experience with them
mhm,
shifting, and the only thing that was going on that was different then was heavily doing the work. And so, I mean, they were truly literally when I was at, like, Nicole's Omega retreats, for example. So I just wanna put that out there that, like, part of my messy middle is getting to see that something can change, but then it reverting. And, um yeah, and I think because of that, well, because I just decided at some point that this process is gonna be really slow and really deep for me. And whether or not that's true, I don't know, we'll see. But it feels that way. It just feels like what's going on for me, I don't know, it just feels really heavy. It feels deep, it feels
mhm,
long, it feels like something that deserves patience, and I don't always have patience, you know?
mhm,
So,
mhm,
that's part of it. Another part of it is that because this work is so confronting and, like, there's so much accountability in it, like, I feel like it asks me to be really humble, accountable, to recognize, oh, I'm distracting myself. Even with let's say I'm having a little fear over symptoms, I might distract myself for a moment and, like, find myself going on the internet and being like, oh, but what about this one last little supplement? Like, I have my moments. It's almost like an
mhm,
addict or something. When I say I've done everything, I mean, I know you know, but I've really done capital E everything. So
mhm,
it's just like it really feels like an addiction to even go back to the internet. Um, but, like, those are messy moments for me too, though, because it can bring the cascade on, and these grooves
mhm,
are, pretty deep. And so,
mhm,
yeah, there's a lot of that. There's also well-meaning friends who learn about my symptoms, who maybe didn't know before, who are, like, deep in their parasite protocols, like, emphatically reminding me that's all I should have ever done for myself, and I notice how quickly I get triggered by that, and I wanna respect other people's journeys. Yeah, there's lots of little hooks that can come in, that can grab me for a moment. But I think also for me, and I wonder if other people need to hear this, it's been one of my larger challenges that we've talked about in therapy is me trying to dismantle this idea that I have to change a lot of things about my life in order to have healing in this way, because I do feel
yeah,
like I have a really busy life. I have a lot of demands. I do have this TMSy personality of being a task manager and, like, my high functioning self, it's
yeah,
there. She's there a
yeah,
lot. And I don't always want to feel like I have to change all those things. And so I struggle, I guess, with, like, negotiating that still at times.
mhm. Yeah, 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 yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And I want to like really pull out the part you're talking about with this has been long and deep for you. Cause that is the truth, and it's long and deep for a lot of people. And I would say for me too. I mean, I've been doing this for over 2.5 years
Mhm.
for myself. I feel like I'm just kind of getting to, like, where I'm, like, in the end phases of the recovery phase. Um, I could be sidelined by symptoms.
Mhm.
God, I hope not, but you know what I mean? I don't
Yeah.
wanna be afraid of that because if that happens, okay, bring it on. Um, but yes, I wanna just go back to, like, this is long and deep because there's also a place for us to say, like, "Oh, don't go there. Don't think that," because you could wake up tomorrow fine. Anybody
Mhm.
who's listening to this podcast who's in the messy middle literally could hear this amazing interview with Michelle and be like, "Oh my god, that really touched me. Wow, I feel so seen and understood. I'm not afraid anymore," and wake up tomorrow literally feeling well. That is
Mhm.
possible. And that doesn't happen for a lot of people, you know?
Mhm.
So the fact that it's long and deep, as much as I think in this world we can, like, people who are into TMS recovery and, like, get this stuff, we can sort of downplay that because for some people it's not true and we don't want it to be a self-fulfilling prophecy to make it true, but for a lot of us it is. And if
Mhm.
it's long and deep for you, okay, me too. What do you
Mhm.
think about that?
I think I resonate so much. I think, like I said earlier, I strive to detach any of the way I'm living from an outcome with my symptoms, even though, like, yes, God, do I desperately want that to happen still in my brain somewhere? Sure, 100%. But there are truly other voices though going on. That's not the only voice. And the other voices are a lot more patient and are a lot more curious. And almost it's like I feel I feel this almost like I don't know, there's a part of my brain that almost, like, laughs at it all, like, which is so relieving considering anybody who knew me personally then, um, yeah, like, knows, like, that full sprint, I don't know any other best way to describe it, and full
That's a great way to
suspension.
describe it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, just to say that, like, I feel like, yeah, it would be really nice to not have the symptoms, but
Mhm.
I've already like I keep saying about the long, slow, deep thing of patience, all that, like, I just feel like I've already experienced so much oxygen since finding this work 3 years ago that, like,
Mhm.
how could I even be I mean, this is just a saying, I feel like I can't even ask for more, like, it's just, like, it so changed the way I was thinking, the way I was living, and also, like I was saying earlier, I do think there's a lot of addictive patterns in it, at least for me, but I could see this happening for a lot of people. I mean, there's part of it is, like, OCD sort of,
Mhm.
like, tendencies within the TMS when you're, like, in, your symptoms or whatever, chronic symptoms
Mhm.
before you really do the work, and for me, I just think, like, wrestling up some of those patterns, like, I just feel like I loosened up just like there's not as tight of a like I feel this, I go there with it. Now I truly am just like, all right, like this is just what it is. This is how I am. Like, and honestly, and I want to talk about therapy, TMS therapy. Can we go
Yeah,
there?
okay, yes, yeah, let's go there. Let me just say this
Yeah.
first, because this is just occurring to me as you're talking about this. Y y I know that we don't wanna obsess over the outcome, and I just wanna say, like, I know your symptoms will continue to
Mm.
improve, as you walk
Mhm.
this I mean, listen to the path you're on, your symptoms will continue to improve. They will.
Mhm. Thank you. That's a beautiful segue into TMS therapy because a huge part of TMS therapy for me, but I would again assume this is sort of ubiquitous, is like meeting with somebody who's confident is so helpful. It is just so helpful. Um, as I
Well,
said it.
okay. I actually, yeah. So let me say, like, because I was thinking about what do I want to say about TMS therapy. So I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
me first, Michelle,
No, please.
and then and then and then it's all you.
Mhm.
um, Part of the reason why Michelle and I talked about doing this in one of our sessions. We talked about doing this podcast interview, and part of the inspiration for this was that I put out an episode. It was the emotional work beyond journaling in the last season of the podcast, which anybody who wants to can feel free to listen to it. Um, and in that episode, I advised people to like seek a therapist as part of their recovery if they thought that'd be helpful for them and if they thought that would like benefit from them and or that would benefit them. And I said like you can do this work with any good therapist. Um and literally, Michelle, who I know listens to the podcast,
Mhm.
sent me a message on Instagram that day being like, really? Like, can you really do
Mhm.
this work with any good therapist? And it got me thinking, I was like, yeah, that's a great question because part of me believes that. And another part of me, I mean, certainly like part of me saying that on the podcast is like, me just sort of working on my own professional confidence in this work. Like it feels weird for me to say like, you will get the best experience if you see me, or even if you like see another therapist who's like dedicated to TMS. Like somehow it sounds like heavy handed or like grandiose or something. But then again, like if you look at basic logic, like if you are struggling with TMS and you see a TMS therapist,
Mhm.
that's probably going to be the best fit for you. Like it's just like a basic logic
Mhm.
kind of A plus B equals C. But but right. I mean, like I said, like that's my own professional confidence. I'm like sort of like too shy to say like just get a TMS therapist. But
Mhm.
so let's talk about it together. Now it's
Yeah.
your turn. What do you and of course no pressure by any means to say that like our work has been perfect and whatnot. I don't need anyone
Yeah.
listening to the podcast to think that, you know what I mean? Like, you know, the struggles of TMS therapy are important too, but anything you want to share about what it's
Yeah.
been like to actually do this.
Yeah, thank you for going first. Because I feel because I feel like such a podcast fan, and so yeah, I that I was sheepish about sending you that message, but it provided great fodder for a conversation. And
Great fodder,
here we
yes.
are. Because again, yeah, I was in therapy, traditional therapy, on and off, but way more on than off for since I was 17 years old, um and I'm a therapist and I understand it. Like, I understand, we all practice a little differently, just naturally so, but I understand like the work of being in therapy from both angles. And I will say that so before I found TMS work and just most of my time in therapy, I always ended up in these long-term therapeutic relationships where we were having very intellectual conversations. I was, especially in my 20s, like seeking out like existential, like sort of people, like people who want to talk about like existential things or whatever. And that might have served a purpose for sure, but it definitely we were not confronting anything, like nothing. And
Mhm.
honestly, like there was deeper than that. Like there was actual legitimate like PTSD work I should have been doing that like people were not catching because I was just so like able to talk about these philosophical things. And and so I did have a therapist before I met you, that I was seeing right before I found TMS work, and then for a little bit after TMS when I found TMS work. And I will say she was pretty effective for me in a lot of areas. She was really with it, and I think what was effective about her was that she was a bit confronting, just naturally so as a therapist. Some are more than others, and I liked her, and I want to shout out. There was actually another therapist too before her, a guy who I really liked too, but like, we're meaning, like, I learned things. Like, I remember
Mhm.
actually being like, "Oh, like, I'm applying this. This isn't just like I'm
Mhm.
going there for, like, my philosophy chat or whatever."
Mhm.
And
Right. Non-TMS therapy is helpful. I've
yeah,
had a lot of it, and it's helpful. Agreed.
totally.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, a big thing that I was talking about with this therapist were my chronic symptoms from the angle that I spoke to you about for the first part of this podcast. And she was on that roller coaster with me. And, when I found this work, I was really moved by it really quickly. Like, it really spoke to me.
Mhm.
And it spoke to me because it scared me, and I'm being so honest. Like,
Yeah.
like, again, the confronting thing, I wish I had a synonym for that right now, but, like,
No,
um
that's good. That's good.
yeah, I was just like, I can't not know what I now just learned about this. Like it just is too true. And so I remember talking with this therapist about it, and she was very assertive, and she was all about like, of course, work on your nervous system. Of course, stress impacts our health. She's like, but there's no way. And she remember her saying, like, I don't want you to be deluded here. There's no way doing work just like that is ever gonna get rid of your symptoms. You have a real health condition. And I remember I was enough into this work at the time that I was like, whatever, I'm just going to compartmentalize that. There's so many other good things in this therapy. And what I found was that, like, eventually this work feels so transcendent to me and it has become like the language I speak. It's not that others need to know about TMS, but like, I don't know, the people I'm closest to truly, I feel like at this time in my life are people who understand this. And it just felt like a strange thing to compartmentalize something that was becoming kind of like the air I breathe with my
Mhm.
therapist. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Right. And let me just butt in to say, like,
yeah.
this therapist who was like clearly really great and really like got you and was able to like see you and help you in a lot of
Mhm.
ways. In this way, she was very wrong. The fact
Mhm.
that she was like, there's no way that doing this emotional work and changing your psychological mindset is going to cure your chronic IBS. There's no way. That is wrong. And I can say that
Mhm.
confidently because even though sometimes I'm still in the messy middle with my hip, I'm not really in the messy middle about my stomach. I
Yeah.
still get stomach pain, but it's always clear to me. It's like it's emotional. It lasts for a couple hours and it's gone. It's I just know that this shit works. And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
I just want to make sure that's obviously that's clear to you, but I want to make sure that's clear to everybody listening that
Yeah.
even though a very wise professional could say like, "Oh, come on, be realistic." That's not true. It actually is true. Back to you.
1,000%. No, and I know that you know it. I mean, I know that you get it specifically with your stomach. Like, even if you just said what you said, like, I know how severe it was, and which is another great segue into me working with you and some of the differences in TMS therapy. Um, I can I just say, like, I've been to Nicole Sachs's Omega retreat twice. I'm actually about to go again next week, but you and I were at the second one together. We overlapped, but we didn't talk at all. I don't even think you saw me. There's 100 people there, but I definitely recognized you. And I recognized you because you had just posted on our Facebook page that we were all on together about your recovery from IBS and like severe, and you were very detailed. And
Right.
I'm like can't not see those things if they relate to my symptoms. And so I was like, oh wow, look at that like great seeming person. Like you were just so open, at least on Facebook, you had great energy in your post. And so I just remember like clocking you at the retreat, but I didn't
I love
even
that.
say hi to you or anything. Yeah, were you
Right.
gonna say
I love that we were there together. That's so
something?
even though we didn't see each other, we didn't
Yeah,
talk. I love that. I mean, also I will say there's like what, like 110 women and
yeah,
5 men at
yeah,
these. So like
exactly.
I kind of stood out.
You
But
definitely
yeah,
did.
go on.
You sat in the front row too, so I think it was, you weren't seeing everyone behind you. I was sitting behind you. And also
Oh,
well, a few rows, but my husband came with me that year too. And it was my second year going. So admittedly, I was also in like a shell with him. We were like really just processing everything together. So I was not very social, but I just remember I'm only
and
saying
I was in the front row like desperately like please please help me.
you were a
But yeah,
great,
go
you know,
on.
but no,
Exactly.
as a sensitive person and also a perceptive person and as somebody who cares about interpersonal dynamics. I definitely like read you though. Like I read you and I don't know if I knew you were a therapist. I might have I don't know if I knew that actually. But anyway, I just remember being like, oh, like he seems like a really genuine person. Like I just got a good read on you as a human, Like so somehow I scanned you that way. And then I don't know, maybe it was within that year you were interviewed on Nicole Sachs's podcast, and I heard that, and I was like, "Oh my god, that guy!" And learned you were a therapist too, and that you were now going to be doing this type of therapy, with your clients. And I, I just think it's fascinating as a therapist too. It's like, how do we attract the people we attract? And like, I think all therapists can only do it whatever they can do. It's like we get our good slice of whatever, like our skill set, who we are sort of metaphysically, like I don't know, but
Mhm.
I remember hearing your episode and not only was I so inspired that you had healed from your very severe IBS through this work, I just was like I resonate with him. I just know that like
Mm.
if I could become one of his clients, like I just know we're gonna have the conversations I need to have. And also, hello, like he's doing TMS fucking work. Like this isn't even
Mhm.
just like good old therapy, Like this is what we would be doing. So yeah, that was about a year ago that we connected, and it is really different. I mean, I have to say, I do think that because I know there's a lot of coaches out there who do good TMS work. And I think that's entirely possible. I've dabbled in a few very briefly at times in the past, but maybe it's because I'm a therapist too. I do appreciate the skill set you bring as a therapist. Like there is years of experience and training that goes into that. I also think like you have I think we are who we are like before we become therapists, and that's just a part of your personality or you that I really appreciate connecting with. Like it resonates with me. But then also I do really appreciate that I could ask you about your experience. Like, that's so helpful to me.
Mm,
Like
yeah. Well, and let me just say that it's
mhm,
nice for me too to be able to share that. Like it's nice for me to have a client who's like, I want to know about you in a way that feels and because of course there's like so much so much lore around like boundaries and not
mhm,
sharing and not disclosing in therapy. And it's nice to have, to be doing this work and be working with people now like yourself who are honestly like, wait, fully for my own benefit, tell me about your symptoms and how this helped you because I need to hear that. Like it's nice for me to be able to bring myself into the work,
mhm,
and that's a really nice part for me.
mhm. Totally. And yeah, and it is at odds with like how we were trained and all of that. But I think that this work, and I've said this to you, and I think this is true for a lot of recovery stuff, it cannot happen in isolation. It has to happen in community. And even this, like one to one, like that's community for me that we could, that I'm not just like home only journaling this away or only doing this or that. Like to have a constant person who I feel weekly a tether with, grounded, knows my story. I can even be on repeat because I feel like I've asked you like 3 times, like, wait, like tell me again exactly exactly what happened for you, even though I know your story. It's just helpful. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, and I think because you understand this work so well, it's so organized, I feel like in your brain, and you just get it, like even in spirit, like you do pull out things that I'm missing or overlooking. Like I feel like I understand this work intellectually, truly, but I'm me with my patterns, and I'll even be in a session with you and ready to move on to the next part of what I was going to say, but you're like whoa, 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 and you always know when to slow it down so that we can just stay with the feeling, and as that relates to the TMS work, like I feel like to have a therapist where we're always within the context of this work or the symptoms and how it relates, they're not just these like, I mean, I'm a therapist. Like, I'm not doing TMS therapy right now. Like, I have, I love what I do for work. I'm not putting it down at all, but they are very different. I wish I could have the kind of accountability. I wish that the clients who I see, many of them came in knowing like this shit is going to be real and raw, and we have to take radical responsibility. And I don't know if all your clients show up that way, but I certainly try to because I know that that's what we're doing here.
Okay, well fucking said, because you do show up that way. Like you are a client who is ready to be in fucking therapy, you know? And the lucky thing is that now that I'm doing TMS work, I luckily I get more clients who are in a space where they are ready. But I still have a lot of my previous clients who are great, great. I feel like I'm
Mhm,
doing just a different kind of work with my clients who have been around for like a longer time. And
mhm.
but it's different. I totally hear what you mean. It's different. It's less like, yeah, like raw radical accountability. It's just less of that, because that is the TMS mindset, like it
Mhm.
takes you deeper. It just takes you deeper. So, okay. Thank you so much for sharing all that. That's really nice to hear. And I mean, it just goes back to the basic premise that like a TMS therapist will be helpful to you if you are struggling with TMS, right?
For sure, for sure.
And
Yeah.
I'll say that from my own personal perspective too. I mean, last year I had a therapist. Her name was Liz Wallenstein. Excellent. She was a TMS therapist, really helped me, more so than other therapists I've had in the past. And I've had many therapists I've really loved. I can think of one in particular who I loved. And she was so great. I had her for years. Um she had like her office in her, it was like, this was before the pandemic, this is like in
Mhm,
person. She had her office in her apartment, which is on the 14th floor of this like nice building in like lower Manhattan. And she was like,
mhm.
she had her dog with her all the time. I mean, it was just like so great. And actually she had TMS. She had like really
Oh.
bad back pain. And when I found this work, I actually forwarded it to her and she was like not interested. But
Ooh.
at the time that I was working with her, my stomach was real bad, and we had no solution. We had no solution.
I
So
just, like, feel like truly, like, hand to heart, like, so much compassion for that whole scene you just painted. I mean, I just understand it so deeply. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh, okay.
Well, can I
All
just
right.
I'm gonna just if you don't mind, I need to just
Yeah.
say out loud this.
Round us out. Round
Well,
us
yeah,
out. Yeah.
rounding out truly is like I know that's not in any way why I came on the podcast today, but I really am grateful for you, and I absolutely endorse you as a TMS therapist for the masses. It's been wonderful. You're so empathetic, you're so confident in this work, and you're listening and you're tuning in, and yeah, and it's just again, it's so comforting to talk to somebody who has experienced, I mean, it just so happens like the same symptoms as me, it seems like in many ways, but just that you understand it at all. I don't think you would have had to have the same symptoms for me to feel that way. Um, and yeah, and I just think like, the humility, there's a lot of humility in this work, and it's something I feel from you too. There's just a lot of like there's just a lot of shared good energy with you. Just want to thank you for that.
Absolutely. And truly same. I feel there's a lot of shared good energy with you. I'm so glad that you reached out to me and that we met and that we're able to do this work together. Because I mean, it's good for me too. It's really nice for me to have clients like you who are like really in it. I learn from you. I grow through meeting with you. So thank you too.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Okay, and well, okay. If you want, do you want to give your information? Like, if people want to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I would be more than happy to do
Okay,
that.
awesome. Let's do that. And let me just say, I want to say this because I think it's really important in TMS work that, like, we're all humans. Like right now, Michelle and I are in the position where I'm the therapist and Michelle is the client. But and where like Michelle's in the messy middle, I am still in the messy middle sometimes myself. That's how life is playing out now. But like say like 10 years from now, I know that you will be doing a lot better. Imagine a place where like it's 10 years from now and you're like IBS was a terrible phase of my life that really transformed me and really woke me up. And that phase is over. And now I'm living a life where I do not have chronic IBS anymore. Like that is very possible I mean, if you keep walking the path, that's what's going to happen in the future.
Mhm.
And there may be a time, say we're in that phase. Maybe I need a therapist. And why would I not call you?
Mhm.
Because I know you, I trust you. So,
Yeah.
and I want to say this for people listening. What you provide, like even just what you're providing today, is so much wisdom, so much guidance and support and empathy for people going through this. So, all that said, why don't you share your info if anybody's listening to this and they're like, I like her, I want
Mm.
her to be my therapist.
That's really sweet. Like, share it literally right now?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I
Like,
mean,
that
are,
wasn't
are
sure.
you cool with that?
No, yeah, totally. I wasn't sure
Okay,
if
great.
let's put it in the show notes. Such a
We'll
podcast
do that
bestie.
too, but yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. The easiest way to contact me is by email, which is just as my name is spelled, Michelle, Michelle, last name Russo, RUSSO, LCSW @gmail.com. And then my website is the same. It's Michelle Russo, LCSW.com. And all the ways to contact me would be there too. And it's true. I mean, so I live and work in upstate New York. I have a private practice. Um, and it's something Sean and I have talked about. Like, I'm like, oh, I feel sheepish about offering mind body work, even though I fully understand this work and believe in it. And because I don't have like this evidence that I can prove and I can keep reminding you of that with my own symptoms. And this is exactly where I've ended up. See, it's like now you can have all the faith because my symptoms are gone. And even you, Sean, have helped me with that. It's like we're all in the messy middle to some extent. And, what I, of course, left out in this podcast because of time is the little things that have come and gone that just weren't this particular thing that I have made enormous meaning out of in my life. So,
Back
yeah,
pain, come and gone. I'm trying to
yeah.
think what other
Oh
you've
my
had a
gosh,
lot that have
I've
come
had a
and
lot of
gone.
things. I won't, maybe I
Yeah,
won't finish them maybe I found, but yeah, so
yeah,
many little things.
yeah. Okay. Okay. I'm like, I don't even know what to say. Thank you so much for coming on. This is so fun. The fact that you like you need to be part of the conversation, and I'm so glad that you are part of the conversation. I'm so glad that whatever part it was in you that was like, oh, should I message Sean about being on the
Hmm.
podcast? Should I even bring it up? Is that ridiculous? Thank you for offering to do this, because I know there was also a part of you that was like, maybe I shouldn't be on the podcast. Maybe that would be like, I don't know how you would put
Yeah, yeah,
words
yeah,
to it, but like,
totally.
yeah. And so the fact that you pushed into it and joined us, people are definitely gonna benefit from hearing about the messy middle from you.
Hmm.
So thank you so much for sharing this.
Thank you, Sean. I really appreciate it.
Okay, yeah. And for everybody listening, this has been Mind Body Medicine for Chronic Pain, and I will plan to see you next week.